especially to the well, will give us the work and then purpose of this gathering. Over to you, Dr. Hilda.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jacqueline Esibe and your team. Madam Chair, special invited guests, seniors and colleagues, the media, and everyone present. It gives me great pleasure on behalf of the National Executive of the Pediatric Society of Ghana to welcome you all to the launch of the Yellow Month for this year. And what we call the Yellow Month really is Newborn Jaundice Awareness Month. Neonatal jaundice or newborn jaundice remains one of the leading causes of admission for babies or newborns who are born in our country. And we all know as healthcare professionals how much morbidity it can cause, and in some cases, death. And we also know that there's a lot we can do as healthcare professionals and even the general public to spot the jaundice early and to help to prevent disability and death from it. And that is why this year we have got a theme or chosen a theme that will speak to it. Every year in May, you see all of us wearing yellow. Yellow, 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 not just because we like the yellow, but we are wearing yellow to say that we don't want any more babies to die from neonatal jaundice. We don't want any more babies to have disability from neonatal jaundice. And we hope that with all the advocacy that we are doing regarding neonatal jaundice, there will definitely be reduced morbidity, there will be definitely reduced death, and we'll all together help to achieve the SDG goals. Thank you all very much for joining us this afternoon for the launch and for the seminar. Have a good meeting.
Thank you very much. We are blessed. And the current we attended and then not much. From there, he moved up. And then,
hello, Dr. Jacqueline.
hello.
Yes, we can barely hear you from this end. I don't know whether it's same with others as well.
Oh, okay.
But it's quite difficult hearing you.
Please, is it better?
No, it's not any better. So I don't know if the microphone is too far. We may have to get a little closer.
Yeah, please. Hello, please, is it better?
It keeps going up and down like us. So we hear you, then you go off and then it comes back. Yes, I see other participants also complaining of same. They can't really hear.
Okay. Good. Okay.
Hello. Please, can I be heard loud and clear by the other participants? I mean, compared to Dr. Jacqueline's.
Yes, we can hear you, Dr. Echo.
All right, so I think the problem then will be from their end.
Okay. Are you able to just take over?
Yes.
Hello, is it better?
Yes, it's much better now. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay.
I think you may have to mute the other microphone.
Okay.
Take the audio off from the other microphone so
Yeah,
that
please, is it better?
Yes, very much better now. You can
Okay,
go ahead.
thank you very much. Sorry about that. Yes, we want to move on to hear the speech from our guest of honor. As I said, the guest of honor is a public health specialist and also the current Deputy Director of Clinical Care, a Deputy Director of Public Health, Bono East Region. She attended medical school at the School of Medical Science, KNUST. From there, she moved to Konfanochi for her housemanship and also did some MO-ship there. From there, he moved to the Bono Regional Hospital in Sunyani as MO for some years, and then became the head of child health at the Bono Regional Hospital for over 10 years. Over 15 years, he was the head of child health. From there, she moved on to be the Municipal Director of Health Services, Sunyani Municipal Hospital. And then afterwards acted as newborn focal person for the former Bono Hafo region, newborn focal person. From there, she rose, when the new regions were created, she rose to become the Deputy Director of Public Health, Bono East Region, and has been in position from 2020 till now. She has several achievements. She has a master's in tropical pediatrics from the University of Liverpool. She also has an MPH from University of Ghana and is also a member of Ghana College of Physicians and Surgeons, Public Health. She's contributed to several publications. We are blessed to have a great woman and a mother of many pediatricians who have passed through the Bono Ahafo region. Our very own and our dear Dr. Mrs. Paulina Clara Appiah. Dr. Appiah, you're welcome. We are happy to have you as our guest of honor and chair for this launch of May 2023 Yellow Month. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Appiah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jacqueline Esibe. Please, can I be heard? Am I clear?
Yes, please, loud and clear.
Great. So good afternoon, everybody, and all protocol observed. I'm very honored to have been asked to speak at the national launch of this year's Newborn Jaundice Awareness Month, and usually commemorated in the May of each year. The Pediatric Society of Ghana, which is a child health awareness and advocacy organization, which seeks to promote the health and well-being of all children in Ghana, has been at the forefront of advocacy and setting policy agenda in child health. The recent awareness and advocacy drive for measles vaccines to be made available for children was exceptional, and I think that was one of the key things recently that has been done by the Pediatric Society of Ghana. And so going to speak about the jaundice, I guess we'll say that we all know that it's a yellowish discoloration of the skin and of the conjunctiva that is from the accumulation of unconjugated bilirubin in the blood. Neonatal jaundice is when the jaundice appears in the first 28 days of birth and is classified into physiological and pathological jaundice. The physiological jaundice we know is mild, self-limiting, that usually occurs 36 hours after birth and resolves without treatment. While the more severe one, called the pathological jaundice, may appear within 24 hours of birth and later, 24 hours of birth or later, depending on the cause. So globally, jaundice affects about half of full-term newborns and 80% of preterm newborns. Failure to identify and treat severe neonatal jaundice can result in life-threatening neurological complications, which imposes a substantial burden on healthcare resources, especially in resource-limited settings such as ours. I therefore applaud the Pediatric Society of Ghana in leading advocacy and awareness creation in this very serious health consequence in the country. You may have heard of newborns leaving hospitals after birth, only to have them return to the hospital with severe jaundice, and newborns at home also being sunburned. This year's theme, Spot the Yellow, Stop Disability and Death, is the approach to go. In a systematic review and meta-analysis of the burden of severe neonatal jaundice published in 2017 by Slasher et al. The incidence of severe neonatal jaundice is reported to be highest in the African region, with 667.8 per 10,000 live births, followed by Southeast Asia, that is doing 251.3 per 10,000 live births. In America, it's 4.4 per 10,000 live births, and in Europe, it's 3.7 per 10,000 live births. So clearly, we see the magnitude of this issue in the African region. If I say African region, it is what the WHO talks mentioned as African region. So in this study, they looked at 416 articles. And in those articles, somewhere they mentioned severe neonatal jaundice. Out of this, they only saw 21 articles that reported population-based estimates to show the burden of severe neonatal jaundice. So clearly, when it comes to data, we have limited data when it comes to severe neonatal jaundice, and this impedes the drive for more investments in neonatal jaundice, especially in resource-constrained settings. Now let's come to Bong Ahafo region. So in St. Elizabeth Hospital in Ahafo, which sometimes serves as a referral hospital for the Ahafo region, 49.8% of the admitted cases have neonatal jaundice as one of their diagnoses. And I'm sure it's not too different from other referral hospitals. Even though some hospitals report lower proportions, I read the study from Prof. Abdul Mumu in Tamale Teaching Hospital, where in their hospital, the proportions of those who were at the NICU and who had neonatal jaundice was 9.7%. And we know that most of the factors that increase the risk for neonatal jaundice, such as acute hemolysis, preterm delivery, prolonged labor, premature rupture of the membranes, Kiefer hematoma, neonatal asphyxia, some of these ones can be prevented. Or if they cannot be prevented at all, something can be done about it. And if it's done timely, it helps save life. There are challenges, and the challenges can be classified either into client-related factors or health system-related factors. And for the health system-related factors, we are looking at human resources, logistics, and then equipment. But then when we look at the client-related factors, we have also seen that caregivers do have low knowledge in the dangers of neonatal jaundice. And some are also unable to spot the yellow. And so some studies again that have been done in TTH and the whole teaching hospital, the knowledge of mothers ranges from 17% to 45%. And these are low. If we really want caregivers to be able to spot the yellow and quickly report to the facility, we need to sensitize our caregivers, our mothers, our fathers, those who are managing newborns to be able to spot this yellow. So this whole month's awareness creation is so appropriate, and it involves using all communication channels available, including at the facility level, where at the service provision point, this awareness creation can be done there. Can also be done at the radio stations, TV, community information centers, during discussions, so that people can call in and then ask the questions. We can also engage the community and get caregivers and community influencers, such as the clergy, the queen mothers, the newborn champions, to be able to know some of the causes of severe neonatal jaundice, know what the symptoms and signs are, and then importantly, seek prompt medical care. This we can start by also building the capacity of health workers, including community health workers, and then also provide supportive supervision and provide adequate equipment for diagnosis and treatment. We should not also forget the social media platforms like Facebook, TikTok, which is also spreading very much in these sensitization campaigns. We can also have skits done in our various local languages and put on these platforms. So I just want to suggest to the Pediatric Society that with this strong voice for advocacy, to be able to actually know the burden of severe neonatal jaundice in our country. And for the country to be able to mobilize resources, we need to include some questions on neonatal jaundice in the demographic and health survey. If we have questions from the demographic and health survey, then at least we know that this is the burden of severe neonatal jaundice or neonatal jaundice in our country. And from there, the policymakers would be aware of what is in the demographic and health survey, and they will help in decision making, and then also help in resource allocation. Again, with the PA Society of Ghana, also on the newborn subcommittee, I'll also admonish that this new variable, I know that already there's neonatal jaundice in the DIMS, and it's in the Form A of the DIMS. But then when you look open Form A, you see that there's under reporting. I was just looking at Bunu East 1, and I realized that for a place like Techiman, the whole of 2022, they recorded 22 neonatal jaundice, which clearly is not the case. It means that that information is not coming into the DIMS. And if it's not coming into the DIMS, then we are not having our managers seeing the cases that we are managing. If you now go and ask for resources, it becomes difficult. So I'm advocating that there is triangulation of data, so that when we look at data in the Form A, and then also data from the NICU, at least we'll be able to validate and know the actual magnitude of severe neonatal jaundice that is happening in our hospitals. And if you're able to do that, knowing the burden of institutional neonatal jaundice would also help us to address the quality of care that happens at the hospital level. And so this is what I would admonish the PA Society of Ghana, at least these two things, play a voice in the demographic and health survey, and also the information that gets into DIMS, but that is where everybody is looking at. I think you're able to do that, we'll be able to mobilize some resources to be able to help in this drive. So let us put our hands together to spot the yellow and stop disability and death. On this note, I would want to say a very big thank you, and then say that the 2023 Yellow Month is duly launched. Thank you very much.
Hello, Dr. Jacqueline. All right, thank you so much, Dr. Paulina Fia.
Okay.
It's been such a privilege knowing you both personally, and you've made such an impact in my life as a pediatrician here in the Bunu East. So I think what Dr. Jacqueline said initially was very true, that most of us have gone through you and have experienced so much from you. I think we'll move on to the next on our program. We have messages from some of our partners. We will take I'm not sure which of the partners are currently on, but a message from GMA President. Okay, so we have the message from the GMA President. I don't know if Dr. Srebo is with us on the call, and he's a pediatrician himself. So this is a very familiar ground for him. Okay, so I think our GMA president is not yet with us. And if we have the GRNMA president, we can take the message from GRNMA. Okay. We were supposed to take a message from the WHO country rep as well, or the UNICEF country rep. Please.
Sorry, Dr. Ganaglo is ready to speak, Dr.
All right. Yes, okay.
From Sogog.
From Sogog, okay. All right. Doc, please, you can unmute and then take over. Thank you very much for the prompt, Dr. Hilda.
Clearly. Am I audible, please?
Yes,
Yes,
please.
you are.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson, President-elects and National Executive members of Pediatric Society of Ghana, all protocols observed. On behalf of SOGOG, I would like to thank you for the invitation to join you on this seminar. SOGOG commends the Pediatric Society of Ghana for its commitment to the interests of children in Ghana and for commemorating the Newborn Jaundice Awareness Month for the past 6 years and counting. We say AICO Pediatric Society of Ghana. Your advocacy drive for optimum health outcomes for children in Ghana is shared by SOGOG, and we look forward to lessons on how to spot the yellow and stop disability and death from this seminar and during your month-long deliberations. On this note, I wish to say on behalf of SOGOG, have a fruitful deliberation on spotting the yellow and stopping disability and death. Thank you very much, and over.
Thank you so much, Sogog. We are grateful for the partnership over the years and for your continued support for the Pediatric Society of Ghana and our advocacies. We are very grateful to have you. And please, if any of the other partners are available now, please, you could unmute and then we'll take a word from you. GMA President, WHO Country Rep, UNICEF Country Rep, or the JRNMA President. All right, so I don't think any of them are on the call yet. In the absence of that,
Tankra is on the call from Africa Health Supplies.
All right. I don't have that on it. Okay, so please, you can unmute and then share the message with us, please. Africa Health Supplies, please, we are ready for you if you are ready.
I think he's dropped off, Dr. Cole.
Okay, all right. Then I think we will take a short interlude. I mean, once you're in Techiman, we should take you on a tour, don't you think so? Yes, so we'll have a short video whilst we give ourselves maybe a minute or so to see if other partners will join and give us a word. Then after that, we'll move on quickly to our next session, which will involve the presentations. So we'll give you a brief tour on Techiman, our neonatal intensive care units. So the direct All right, so I think we have Salbert Ankra from African Health Supplies. I can see you on the call now, so can you please unmute and then Danny, can you please unmute him for Albert Ankra? So you can close the chat and then unmute him.
Hello, participant. Albert, AL.
Dr. Cole, Mr. Ankra is on the call. If the
Yes,
host cannot.
We are looking for him, the participants, to unmute him.
Okay, thank you.
What name did he use?
Albert Ankra.
Any name? Echo.
Okay, Aaron Ankra, yeah. Unmute. Has to unmute. Okay. Yes, so we've asked, but I think he's still unable to unmute. Aaron Ankra. I don't know if he has challenges on that side. Dr. Hilda, is he the same person as Aaron Ankra?
No, it's Albert Ankra.
Albert, not Aaron. So Go down and let's check it. Okay.
There's no Albert Ankra. I've also been checking. I can't see any Albert Ankra.
There's no Albert Ankra on the call. I don't know if you joined with a different name.
Okay, Dr. Cole, kindly let's move on and we'll sort it out. Thank you.
All right, so we will move on to the next session of our program. So the next session will be a session on the various topics we'll be presenting. That will be the educational session. So first, we'll have a presentation on an overview on neonatal jaundice. And then to do that for us is our very own Dr. Jennifer Asaman, who is at the Sunyani Municipal Hospital as a pediatrician. And Dr. Jennifer had her medical education at the SMD KNUST. In fact, she was my senior by a year, so I always call her boss. And then those of us at CAT, she is popularly referred to as Obroni Doctor. Yes. And she is also a member of the Ghana College of Physicians, and then currently undergoing a master's program in the Catholic University, a master's in public health. She has various other courses to her credit, and then so many achievements. She's very purpose and goal-driven, and she's well-motivated, self-motivated. She has a very, very strong heart and then strong love for neonatology. And for that reason, we didn't think there was any other person better to give an overview on this topic than she. So we'll invite Dr. Jennifer Asaman of the Sunyani Municipal Hospital to take us through the overview of neonatal jaundice. Dr. Jenny, if you are around, please, if you want to share your slides, you can do that from your end. Otherwise, we can share the slides here for you, so you continue.
Sorry, Echo. Thank you very much for the introduction. Please, am I being heard?
Yes, we can hear you. But if you could put your slides in slideshow for us, that would be appreciated.
Okay. Please, is it okay now?
Yes, very well. Please, you can start when you're ready.
Okay, I am. I would please to put my video off because we are having challenges with network. Okay, good afternoon to us all. And as introduced already, I'm giving an overview of neonatal jaundice. I've been doing this over the years as Jaundice Newborn Awareness Month, and there's been a lot of advocacy and stuff we've done. So I think we can only continue the good work that we have started. There's going to be an outline of my presentation. And I think the chairperson has actually made my presentation much simpler and easier because she's given us almost all the introduction that we need to newborn jaundice. And that notwithstanding, jaundice, we know, it refers to the yellow discoloration of the skin and sclera. And this is caused mainly by deposition of bilirubin. And it's one of the most common conditions that requires medical attention in our newborn babies. And they end up being admitted on account of the newborn jaundice. And globally, it's been estimated approximately 60%, that is 6 out of 10 term newborns get jaundice. And it's even worse in preterms. We have 80%, 8 out of 10 babies that are delivered preterm end up having jaundice in the first week of life. So it's a very serious condition that we need to look at because it's causing significant morbidity, if not even that much mortality in our babies. A study conducted by Adoba et al. In 2018 in the Efutu municipality knowledge of caregivers and providing care when it comes to neonatal jaundice. It revealed that the prevalence of jaundice in Ghana was as high as 66.7%. And what is more worrying was that over 90% of the participants did not even know that jaundice could cause damage to other organs in the body. So even though we've been carrying on the advocacy, we still have a lot more work to do. Another study by Sabia SM et al. In 2021 got some data from Ghana Health Service. It was just in words. I have put it in this graphical presentation. They gave these figures according to the years of the number of cases of jaundice that was recorded in our facilities in Ghana from 2015 to 2019. And as you can see, the trend is actually increasing. And it's very good. We can take this credit because of the advocacy that we've carried out throughout the previous years and everything that we've been doing. It means people are now becoming aware of newborn jaundice. People are now beginning to see babies who are who have jaundice, and they are beginning to report, and then we are taking care of them, and it's going into our data. So I think it's an encouragement for us to keep on. I'm sure if we add 2020, 2021 data to this, the graph is actually going to go looking at the trend it has taken. Now we look at the pathogenesis of hyperbilirubinemia. When we say hyperbilirubinemia, it means high bilirubin in the blood. Hyper is high, bilirubin, and then anemia in the blood. And that is, as we said, the deposition of the bilirubin is what causes the jaundice. So when you have the high levels of the bilirubin in the blood, then it manifests as it's deposited, then it manifests as the jaundice. And mainly it's because of an imbalance in between the bilirubin production, its conjugation, and elimination from the system. And in the newborns, they generally have very high hemoglobin levels. You could have their HBs going as high as 18, 19, 17, and this is a physiological phenomenon. And definitely within the first week through to the first month of life, these hemoglobins would break, it would reduce, the RBCs would break down and it will reduce to come to near normal levels as the other children. And you realize that once it's broken down, the products that are released is what will account for the jaundice in these newborns. Others also have the the birth from hematomas and other stuff. When it comes to decreased bilirubin conjugation, we realize we'll go into how the bilirubin the heme is metabolized. But let's just note that this enzyme called UDP glucuronidase transferase is deficient in the newborns, and aside its lower levels in the newborns, its activity is also lower. And some of the newborns also have some enzymopathies. And all these come together to cause a decrease in the conjugation of the bilirubin within the liver. And subsequently, you have higher levels of the unconjugated bilirubin in the blood. And then you can also talk about defective excretion of the bilirubin from the system of the baby. We look at this pictorial picture, and it's talking about how the RBCs are hemolyzed within the system and how it is metabolized. So once the RBC is broken down, it gives it the hemoglobin. It has the heme component and the globin component. So the heme component that is released from the hemolysis is oxidized by the heme oxygenase to form the biliverdin. And then the biliverdin reductase reduces the biliverdin into bilirubin. Now this bilirubin is unconjugated and it's free within the system of the baby. This free bilirubin is fat soluble. That is the unconjugated bilirubin. It is fat soluble and is capable of crossing the blood-brain barrier to be able to cause toxicity in the brain in very high levels. But this is what we don't want. So once it is unconjugated and it is fat soluble, the target of the system is to be able to make it conjugated and water soluble so that it doesn't cross the brain, cause the toxicity that is harmful. So the free bilirubin, we are looking at it being bound to albumin, and the system is bound to albumin, and then it's transported through with the albumin through to the liver. And within the liver, it's released from the albumin and bound to ligandins, X and Y. And once it's bound to the ligandins, this allows conjugation to take place by the UDP glucuronidase transferase enzyme. Now, once it is conjugated, it is then excreted through the gut. And as it goes through the gut, is acted on by gut bacteria to convert it into steatobilinogen, which is excreted in stool, or urobilinogen, which is excreted in urine. Now, sometimes when it is conjugated and it reaches the gut, there's this enzyme, beta-glucuronidase. The beta-glucuronidase acts on the conjugated bilirubin and deconjugates it, and then it becomes unconjugated again. And this unconjugated bilirubin goes back through the system into the liver again, requiring reconjugation. So it's called the enterohepatic circulation. And all this is adding on to the load of the unconjugated component that is supposed to be acted on in the liver. As already introduced by the chairperson, we have mainly unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia and then conjugated hyperbilirubinemia. Now, looking at the unconjugated one, it could be either physiologic or pathologic. And the pathologic ones could be hemolytic or non-hemolytic. The conjugated ones, because the conjugation occurs within the liver, you realize that the conjugated ones are either hepatic or post-hepatic causes of the newborn jaundice. And as I have already said, the unconjugated bilirubin is free to bind to albumin, it is fat soluble, it crosses the blood-brain barrier, and in toxic levels, it can cause brain damage. As against the conjugated bilirubin, which is water soluble, that cannot cross the blood-brain barrier. And the water soluble one is what is able to be excreted from the system as steatobilinogen in stool or urobilinogen in urine. A comparison of the two, physiological and pathological jaundice. Usually for the physiological jaundice, it starts after second to third day of life. But then the pathological jaundice usually can even occur within the first 24 hours of life, even within the first hour. The rate of bilirubin rise is usually less than 5 milligrams per deciliter per 24 hours. So when you check the serum bilirubin and then today, and you check it again the same time tomorrow, the difference in the rise shouldn't be more than, or it shouldn't be up to 5 milligrams per deciliter in a physiological jaundice. But then in pathological jaundice, it is obviously more than that. And then the peak bilirubin concentration, that is the highest level that the bilirubin can get to, is usually not up to 12 milligrams per deciliter in full-term newborns or 14 milligrams per deciliter in preterm newborns, as against the pathological ones where it is more than those levels. And the duration for the physiological jaundice is mostly less than 8 days in newborn, full-term newborns and 14 days in preterm newborns. And for the pathological ones, it goes beyond 1 week for the full-term newborns and goes beyond 14 days in the preterm newborns. Some people are able to measure the constituents of the bilirubin, and at any point in time, if you measure, looking out for these constituents, you could have a figure less than 2 milligrams per deciliter at any point in time for physiological jaundice, but more than that for pathological jaundice. And in a baby who is jaundiced and has physiological jaundice, these are usually well babies. They are just jaundiced. They are very active. They are breastfeeding well. All the reflexes are intact. They are not sick. Their urine and stool color is normal. They are not anemic. As against the pathological jaundice, where the baby usually is thicker, the baby is anemic. The baby has an abnormal color of urine, has pale stools, among other things. These are just a few differences between the physiological jaundice and the pathological jaundice. Now we look at just the physiological components. I've already mentioned that the newborn has a high hemoglobin concentration, and aside the HBs being very high, the RBCs of the newborns are more susceptible to oxidant injury. They are not as robust as the matured RBC. So they hemolyze at a faster rate. So when you expect a matured RBC to hemolyze after 90 to 120 days, the newborn RBCs are hemolyzing within 60 to 80 days. So the turnover is very high and they break. And once that hemoglobin breaks down from the metabolism that we've gone through, it's going to release the heme. And that heme is going to be metabolized to produce the bilirubin. And that bilirubin would have higher levels, would be higher in levels within the bloodstream. I've also mentioned that the enzyme, the UDP glucuronidase transferase, which is supposed to conjugate the bilirubin within the liver, they are very low levels in the newborn. And aside that, only 1% of newborns have full enzyme activity at birth. So you can imagine there's a lot to be done at that point. You are producing so much of your heme, and then you are producing so much of your bilirubin, but your liver is not even able to conjugate significantly a good amount of it because the enzyme there has a lower activity. And that reduces its ability to eliminate bilirubin from the body. Also, the levels of the ligandins are also reduced at birth. And then because of that, once the bilirubin is even transported to the liver, and let's say you even have enough of the UDP gluconeotransferase enzyme, and you don't have enough of the ligandins to bind it, it's difficult for it to be conjugated. Hence, there'll be a problem eliminating that bilirubin from the system of the baby. Now, some babies at birth, they have some delays with closure of the ductus venosus. So once they have a patent ductus venosus, blood bypasses the liver. So straight from the ductus venosus, the blood enters the inferior vena cava, bypassing the liver for conjugation to occur. And once it enters the inferior vena cava, it goes up for circulation and goes into the system. And remember, this is hemolyzed blood, or this is an unconjugated bilirubin that is in that blood. And it has bypassed the liver where it is supposed to be conjugated. And because the ductus venosus is patent and a larger amount of the blood is going through there, very little is transported to the liver for the unconjugated bilirubin within to be conjugated. So then we have a problem with elimination, and you have higher levels of the unconjugated bilirubin within the system. After struggling to conjugate this bilirubin in the system of the baby, and it is transported through to the gut, then the intestinal bacteria, and then the beta-glucuronidase and other enzymes also act on it, converting it back to the unconjugated form, and this goes back through the enterohepatic circulation, going to cause higher levels of unconjugated bilirubin again. Now let's look at this, breast milk and then breastfeeding jaundice. Let's take notes of the two. Breast milk jaundice, this is a jaundice that is caused by the breast milk. Some mothers, some way, somehow, have been found to have higher levels of the beta-glucuronidase enzyme in their breast milk. And this goes to cause the deconjugation that we have outlined already. So that one, well, as long as you breastfeed, the baby would be jaundice. But then you weigh the pros against the cons, the benefits of the breastfeeding against the toxicity. But usually those ones, the rise of the bilirubin is not so high that it will cause damage to the baby. So we still encourage that the baby would breastfeed. Now, the breastfeeding jaundice is the baby not getting the breast milk, usually because of problems of positioning, attachments, issues with latching to the breast, with engorgement of the breast, cracked nipples and all that. So the baby is starved, the baby gets dehydrated, the baby doesn't get enough of the breast milk, and then there's stasis within the gut. And that again also increases the enterohepatic circulation. Just a little on conjugated hyperbilirubinemia. I know one of our speakers would dwell on that, but some of the causes of that, most of them are from infections. Look at the torches, hepatitis B, idiopathic neonatal hepatitis. You could look at anatomic causes, biliary atresia, cholelocalcis, and some syndromes, and also some metabolic causes as listed. I won't talk much on this slide. Some of the symptoms of jaundice. I mean, jaundice is clinical. Once you see it, you have seen it. And the only thing is that they will be jaundice. They will be yellow in the skin, in the sclera. As to the level of the yellowing is another thing, but there is a yellow. And once you see it, it is nothing else but jaundice. And the pathological jaundice, some of them come in with pale stools. As I said, some are very sick, some have dark urine, among others. And the neurological manifestation, I'll talk about later as a symptoms when it becomes very toxic. Now, in investigating a baby with neonatal jaundice, you need to do some sampling, you need to do some investigations, but then there are a lot of facilities where it's difficult to do those things. We have this chart, which is the chromosomes. It just helps you to estimate about how much of the bilirubin is within the system of the baby. It doesn't mean it's very specific. It just gives you an estimation and gives you a fair idea and possibly what to start doing for this particular baby. If you look at the pictures, the first picture, it's very mild, and then the second one, it's a picture that is more of a severe or a deeply jaundiced child. Now, this particular picture, it starts from the head. As we know, jaundice spreads cephalocaudally. It doesn't start from the feet and go to the head. It starts from the head and then spreads down to the feet. So you look at it, when it's from the head through to the neck, as the face and the neck, these are the estimated levels. If it's just mild, it's about 5 to 7 milligrams per deciliter. And then if it is deeply jaundiced, it's about 7 to 9 milligrams per deciliter of the bilirubin that is within the system. It could be from all the way from the head up to the level of the umbilicus or the upper abdomen, and the figures are there. It could come down to the mid-thighs, or it could come down to the ankles, which is 4. Now, when you have 5, if you sit in the hospital and you have a baby coming in with jaundice and the palms and the soles of the feet are all deeply yellow, please don't say you are waiting for SBR. You need to act as soon as possible. You could also do the total serum bilirubin, and this measures the total bilirubin. It gives you the components of conjugated and the components of unconjugated bilirubin. And these figures, you would always have to calculate the conjugated percentage, because in a newborn, we don't expect the conjugated percentage to be more than 20% of the total bilirubin. That is, you take the conjugated value over the total times 100. It shouldn't be more than 20%. If it is more than 20%, it is not a physiological jaundice, and you have to start looking for other pathological causes. And then you plot this figure on a nomogram and institute the management as per the nomogram. We also have what we call the transcutaneous bilirubinometry, and this one reduces the invasiveness of taking blood from the baby. It's just a probe you place on the trunk, the abdomen, the forehead, or other parts of the body, the skin, and then it gives you a fair idea of what the figure is. This is the nomogram, and note that it's a specific with the gestational age and also the age of the baby in hours. So when the first thing you do is that you should know the gestational age of the baby and pick a nomogram that corresponds to the gestational age of the baby. This one is 33 weeks gestation. Now, the vertical axis shows the serum bilirubin levels, and then the horizontal shows the days, the age of the baby in days and in hours. The big boxes are the days. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 days. Now the smaller boxes is hours. Each small box is 6 hours. So when you have a baby who is 1 day and 18 hours old, it comes here and you plot against the bilirubin level. If you just assume that this baby is 1 day old and you plot along here, you see that you'll be having a lower or an uninformed or a wrong plot on the chart. The interpretation of the graph is that there are 2 lines, the blue and then the red line. Below the blue line means it's not very high and just breastfeeding can't clear the jaundice. When you plot and you get your line between the red and the blue lines, that is a photo range. The baby needs to be placed under the phototherapy. And then if it goes above the red line, this baby needs an exchange blood transfusion as soon as possible. And once you institute your management, you still have to monitor the trends of your total serum bilirubin or your TCB. We do investigations when babies come in with jaundice, and a lot of the time we don't even put it together to analyze and appreciate what this baby has. If you check your serum bilirubin and you have more of unconjugated bilirubin, and then the retic count, it's very, very significant for us to do retic count, even though most facilities are not able to do it, but we have to. If you check full blood count plus retic and they're selling bilirubin, and unconjugated bilirubin is high, your retic count is high, and your HB hemoglobin is normal or even low normal, then you go ahead and do the Coombs test to see, is it if it's positive, then possibly is an autoimmune cause. You look at resource incompatibility and then ABO incompatibility. If the unconjugated bilirubin is high, retic is high, and hemoglobin is normal or low normal, and the Coombs test is negative, you do a peripheral blood smear to look for the membranopathy, spherocytosis, elliptocytosis. It can all cause hemolysis. Then also, if that is abnormal, that is normal, you could also look at the RBC enzyme assay, G6PD screen, the enolase activity levels and all that. If you do, and then the unconjugated component is high, and retic is normal, and hemoglobin is also normal, that is a non-hemolytic cause. You have to rule out bed trauma, hemorrhage and others, the enterohepatic circulation and others. And also you have to rule out a physiologic jaundice or breast milk jaundice. If you do all those analyses and everything is normal, you go ahead to do your TSH, T4, and albumin levels. Remember, Hypothyroidism can also cause jaundice in a newborn, and this even usually causes prolonged jaundice. So by the time you are getting to this arm of the investigation, I'm sure you'd have gone past 7 days in a term baby and 14 days in a preterm baby. Also, you could, if all these ones are abnormal, that is where you go. But once they are normal, you may have to progress to genetic testing, where we have the Crigler-Najjar and the Gilbert syndrome. They all cause unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia. If you have a conjugated hyperbilirubinemia together with unconjugated, it's like a mixed picture. You've tried your percentage and it's 40-60. You're not sure where you are. Even though it's more unconjugated, there's still a significantly high levels of conjugated. Then you have to be looking at sepsis as a possible cause of the jaundice in the baby. So you need to do an LP, you did urinalysis and other things to rule out infection. And also do imaging to rule out other obstructive causes of the jaundice and other chromosomal anomalies. Now we look at complications. My time is up, but then just a few minutes more. You look at complications. Once the bilirubin crosses the brain, it can cause acute bilirubin encephalopathy. And this syndrome usually comes with lethargy initially. So some of the babies, once they are coming in late, you find that they are lethargic, they are hypotonic, and they are not feeding well. And mostly this is the time the mothers will come to you. So we need to act very fast at this particular point in time before it progresses. This acute bilirubin encephalopathy initial presentation can progress to fever with a high-pitched cry and hypersonia, and then the abnormal posturing. If further still we haven't acted or the right thing is not done, then it progresses to the chronic bilirubin encephalopathy, what we call the kernicterus. And this causes an irreversible, that is why I put it in red. It is irreversible, very painful, something that could be prevented. And it becomes an irreversible damage in the brain of this baby. Not the best medicine in the world can reverse that damage. So you see that it's very painful. And this results in a cerebral palsy, with or without seizures. It can cause hearing deficits, it can cause oculomotor disturbances. And this baby becomes a burden on the mother, on the family, on the community, and the nation at large. Keeps coming in and out of hospital. Something we could have prevented. Now, histologically, when you cut a brain of such a baby, you are going to see deep yellow staining of the neurons of the basal ganglia and the brainstem nuclei. Now, the goals of management, we want to prevent bilirubin encephalopathy. We don't want it to happen. So mainly we have phototherapy, we have exchange blood transfusion, and then medical management. We do IV immunoglobulins, and then some use phenobarb. And also, we are not forgetting treating the underlying cause. If it's a biliary atresia, they need surgical intervention. If it's an infection, you need to treat the infection, among others. Now, this first picture, it shows just some of the features of a phototherapy machine. We have different types, we have improvised ones, but there is a standard criteria that whichever photo machine you are using, it is supposed to meet that particular criteria. So the wavelength of the light that should be used should be between 450 and 490 nanometers. A lot of the time, our mothers go to sunbath this baby, which is wrong. How much of that light from up there would come to this baby? There are so many other components, and they are not effective. It's just the blue range of light that works in breaking down the bilirubin. And then the wavelength, that is for the wavelength. And then the distance, the baby should be placed 30 to 50 centimeters from the photo machine. So you don't place the baby too close to burn up the baby. And if it's too far, you're not going to get the effectiveness. The best is the firefly, which gives a level, a light source above and light source below the baby. Then in exposing the baby has to be adequately exposed with just the eyes covered with an eye shield, and then the nappy area, the groin covered with a diaper. The rest of the body has to be exposed very well to the light. And the irradiance, you need a level of 10 to 30 microwatts per centimeter squared per nanometer. So for the standard phototherapies, they use about 10, and then the intensive ones like the firefly, the irradiance is about 30. It's more than 30. The exchange blood transfusion, as demonstrated on the other aspects, when you look, it's just a cannulation into the umbilical vein, and then the blood from the baby that is jaundice is drawn out and then replaced with blood that is not jaundice, just to be able to reduce the levels of the unconjugated bilirubin within the system that would cause toxicity in the baby. There are some other newer technologies. This study by Lai et al. In 2022 looked at the new SCB. I haven't used this app before, but the conclusion from that study was that the app is very similar when it comes to its effectiveness as the TCV does. So we could look at it and then give it a try. And then also in 2014, Patel et al. Also used this, which is a Billy cam. You take a picture of the baby and then it's able to tell you whether this baby is jaundiced or not. And we could look at it and see if it would work in our setting. So in conclusion, jaundice is the most frequent cause of admissions after early discharge to our newborn care units. And we should note that it is not physiological. If it appears within 24 hours, no matter how low it is, once the baby is jaundiced within the first 24 hours of life, please act and act fast. And once there's evidence of hemolysis, it means it is pathological. You have to go ahead and look for, is it a resource incompatibility? Is it an ABO incompatibility? Is it a G6PD screen for the enzymopathies? Is it a spherocytosis and elliptocytosis? Let's just not settle with the fact that it is jaundice. I've seen you, I've placed you under the photo machine, and then you are responding, and that is the end of it. Also, if it is the direct components of the bilirubin is more than 20% of the total, also know that this jaundice is not a physiological jaundice and it shouldn't persist beyond 3 weeks of life. If it does, it is not physiological. And I've said this already, jaundice within the first 24 hours of life must be investigated and treated as an emergency. And the last of it is that early initiation of breastfeeding keeps the yellow away. Thank you very much, my references.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jennifer. That was a very comprehensive lecture, I should say, on neonatal jaundice. And this is more than an overview. Yes. So please, there are some who probably have activated their highlighters, so they keep writing on the screen. So please check and see if you have. Please deactivate that so that we can have a clear screen. And once again, thank you so much, Dr. Jennifer. We are running behind time, so we'll quickly move on to our next presentation. If you have any questions, please note them down. You can start typing them in the box. We will fish them all out and then answer them after the presentations. So we'll move on to our second presentation for the evening. And that is to be done by Dr. Nana Anyemedu Ananebenfo. And she is a pediatrician and a public health specialist at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital. She had a medical education at SMD KNUST and then proceeded to have a master's in public health in epidemiology and disease control. She is a member of the Ghana College of Physicians and Surgeons, specialist pediatrician. Okay. So she'll be taking us through prolonged neonatal jaundice. She has a lot of experience in newborn care. In fact, she is the specialist in charge of the newborn unit at Kolebu Teaching Hospital. So she has vast experience in managing newborn, and she will take us through prolonged neonatal jaundice. And just before she comes, I would want to say that we see these beautiful decorations in our background, but it was all done for free for us by a mother who had a child with prolonged neonatal jaundice and have survived. She was managed jointly by the Techiman and the Konfanochi team. So to show her appreciation, she did all these decorations for us for free. So we can see that if we help the babies, we prevent disability, then there is joy in the family as well. So Dr. Anna Nebinfo, if you are ready, please take over for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I hope I can be heard, please.
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, thank you very much. A point of correction, I'm not the specialist in charge at the neonatal intensive care units. I used to be one of the specialists working there last year. Thank you very much. So my topic today was on prolonged neonatal jaundice. And I have coined it neonatal jaundice, not always about the blue light, to bring to mind the fact that not all forms of neonatal jaundice requires phototherapies, that we can think outside the box to always help our parents and babies who come with different forms of neonatal jaundice. So these are my objectives. At the end of this presentation, I hope we'll be able to define what prolonged jaundice is, as well as neonatal cholestasis, identify common etiologies, and then describe important aspects in the approach of a neonate with cholestasis, and also outline the various tiers in the management of a neonate with cholestasis, and then explain the principles of management. This is my outline. So if we are ready, let's go. So one will ask, what is prolonged neonatal jaundice? Prolonged neonatal jaundice is defined as jaundice that has lasted more than 14 days in a term neonate and 21 days in a preterm neonate. And it's common, it's up to about 15% in all newborns. And most of these babies tend to have the unconjugated form of hyperbilirubinemia. But as Dr. Jennifer Asma mentioned, we have the conjugated forms as well. So a mother will bring her baby to you and ask you, how come my baby is still jaundiced after all this while? You should think about two main causes. We have the conjugated and then the unconjugated hyperbilirubinemia. Dr. Asma has described or discussed the unconjugated form, so I'll not go into details. So if we are ready, let's continue with our marathon. Conjugated hyperbilirubinemia is generally defined as conjugated bilirubin levels which are more than 17 micromole per liter when total bilirubin is less than 85 micromole per liter, or more than 20% of total bilirubin if it's more than, total bilirubin is more than 85 micromole per liter. I know it's the second definition that we usually will talk about, but we should also note the first definition as well. And we should also remember that conjugated hyperbilirubinemia is always pathologic. So as soon as you see a baby who has conjugated hyperbilirubinemia or is jaundiced for more than 2 to 4 weeks, you need to investigate this child for conjugated hyperbilirubinemia, although the baby may look normal. One would define neonatal cholestasis as a group of disorders associated with reduced bowel formation and bowel flow, and is manifested by conjugated hyperbilirubinemia in the first 3 months. So it's not just an obstruction. Most of the time, we always think cholestasis is obstruction, but it also has to do with a reduced bowel formation. There's a wide range of conditions which have similar overlapping presentations. And usually the diagnosis is usually broad. You have clinical, chemical, biochemical, radiological, and histological. And usually putting all these things together to make a diagnosis can be challenging. So why should we be worried about neonatal cholestasis? It affects 1 in 2,500 live births, and any infant that we see who has pale stools or dark urine, the first thing you should think about is neonatal cholestasis. And in 20 to about 25% of cases, it's due to genetic changes. And now there are new tests which have come up, genetic biome studies, genome studies, which have shown there are a lot more genetic mutations taking place. But unfortunately, they are not being diagnosed early. In developing countries, you can have a baby presenting for medical care as late as 4.5 weeks of age. And the average age at presentation to tertiary facilities can sometimes be 3 to 3.5 months, where in developed countries, diagnoses are made as early as 1 month. And despite advances which have been made in the investigation of cholestasis, there are still delays in the diagnosis and management. So what are the problems here in Ghana? I group them into healthcare-related and patient-related factors. For the first one, under healthcare-related, we have low level of education amongst healthcare providers. And I'm very happy PSG has taken up this to always campaign and advocate for neonatal jaundice. And you also have long periods between the last postnatal visit and the first child welfare clinic. In Ghana, you know that the last postnatal clinic usually is about 7 days of birth, and the baby will not be seen by a healthcare professional till the baby is 6 weeks old and comes for the first child welfare clinic. And this is quite a long period. We also have misdiagnosis of prolonged jaundice. Sometimes mothers will come and complain to healthcare providers and they'll say, oh, just put your baby under the sun and your baby will be fine. Oh, just breastfeed your baby will be fine. And these are things that we tend to tell our mothers. And this sometimes the child may have neonatal cholestasis and it might be diagnosed later. We also have lack of adequate logistics and diagnostic facilities in Ghana. We don't have the right radiographical techniques such as the HIDA scan. Even liver biopsy sometimes may be a challenge. We also have poor referral systems, and the number of pediatric gastroenterologists is very, very inadequate. For patient-related factors, the major one is low socioeconomic status. You also have lack of public education. And I hope at the end of this presentation, we will all go out and talk more about neonatal jaundice and neonatal cholestasis. And we also have myths and trivialization of prolonged jaundice. There are some people who believe that when your baby is jaundiced, you may have eaten some kind of food or you did something during your pregnancy. Others will also tell you to just continue breastfeeding your baby and that it would clear. And also sometimes the parents feel that they are wasting their money and time when you ask them to do certain labs. And then there's also apathy as well. So these are the issues that we have to address so that we can demystify these myths from the general public. When you come to our gastroenterology clinic in Kolebu, last year we saw a total of 94 new attendants. And out of this, 35.1% were cases of neonatal cholestasis. Majority of them were biliary atresia, which is the most common cause of neonatal cholestasis. 9 had already had the post-Kasai procedure done, and 6, unfortunately, were missed and came with signs of chronic liver disease. We also diagnosed some with urinary tract infections. We also had some metabolic disease, of which we diagnosed thyroxinemia in one of them. And we also had progressive familial intrahepatic cholestasis also being diagnosed, as well as 6 others who we are still investigating the cause. So just like how Scooby-Doo and his friends will see a case and be excited, once we see high direct bilirubin levels, we should be on the look and start investigating the child accordingly. So what are the causes of neonatal cholestasis? So it's grouped under 2 broad categories. We have the biliary and hepatocellular causes. Under the biliary causes, we have the extrahepatic and intrahepatic bile duct abnormalities. And the commonest, as I mentioned earlier, is biliary atresia, which accounts for about 35% of all cases of neonatal cholestasis. We have other surgical causes as well, but we should note that hypothyroidism and panhypopituitarism are also common causes. We don't have total parenteral nutrition in our part of the world, but in the developed countries, total parenteral nutrition-associated cholestasis is quite common in the NICU, especially among preterm babies. Another intrahepatic bile duct problems, we have bile duct paucity syndrome, such as Alagille syndrome. We also have the non-syndromic conditions as well. And then we have ductal plate malformations, which are also intrahepatic bile duct malformations. And we also have some trisomies, such as trisomy 21, trisomy 18, which can cause cholestasis. For the hepatocellular causes, we have the most common, as Dr. Asma mentioned, being sepsis. And we can never stop talking about sepsis, as it always affects newborns. And it's usually bacterial or viral. And we also have some metabolic or storage diseases, such as thyroxinemia, galactosemia, and the Niemann-Pick disorder. We also have drugs toxicity. Some drugs have been shown to cause cholestasis, antibiotics, and I think penicillin is quite common. So we all know that newborn infants tends to have immature liver activity or liver function. The ability for their hepatocytes to metabolize and excrete bile or bile acids are reduced. And this is what predisposes most of our infants to develop cholestasis. And when cholestasis develops, there are three main issues that can happen. You have bile retention or regurgitation of bile back into the bloodstream. And this would cause the urine color to change and become dark. And it can also, if it's long-standing, it can lead to deposition of these bile acids, which can cause pruritus and also eventually cause hepatotoxicity. You also have progressive biliary cirrhosis, because these bile acids are spilling into the canaliculi and all around the hepatocytes, which are eventually causing fibrosis and damage to the liver. So eventually you have cirrhosis and its associated issues, which will occur later on, such as portal hypertension and the rest. And because bile is not getting into the intestines due to the cholestasis, you have reduced amounts of bile getting to the intestines, and this would result in malabsorption, growth retardation, malnutrition, and especially the fat-soluble vitamins. They are not going to be absorbed, so there will be a deficiency of these fat-soluble vitamins. And then they can also have issues with diarrhea and then calcium metabolism as well. So how would you investigate a child with cholestatic jaundice? First and foremost, we need to take a detailed history. You need to ask the mother the age of presentation of the symptoms, and then the gender is very important, as biliary atresia, which will be discussed later, is quite common amongst females. You need to have a look at the stool. Most of the time, we don't do that. And anytime you see a child with prolonged jaundice, please ask the mother to show you the diaper, or better still, do a DRE and look at the color of the stool. If it's pale, ask, is it persistent or intermittent? That will give you an idea to which diagnosis you are dealing with. You also have to ask the mother if there's any history of abdominal distension or lethargy or vomiting, because these ones can give you a clue of a metabolic abnormality. Also, pruritus is not usually common in the neonatal period, but usually after 6 months, you tend to have parents or telling you their child itches quite frequently, and it's very troublesome for both the parents and the infant as well. Antenatal history is very important. Ask about maternal rash, ask about abortions or fetal losses, or you should also ask about early neonatal deaths. And then you also need to know the age of delivery of the baby. Was the baby born at term or preterm? And then the weight, as low birth weight and small for gestational age infants are at a high risk of neonatal cholestasis. Postnatal period, you need to ask about the cry of the child. Is it hoarse? Is the child constipated? Is there delayed passage of meconium? This you are thinking about congenital hypothyroidism. And then the milestones of the infant as well. Family history is very important, as most of these genetic conditions may be inherited. So you need to ask about the history of consanguinity and whether other siblings have also been affected. What should I look out for when you're examining this child? Look at lethargy, look at irritability, look for dysmorphic features. Does the child have features of trisomy 21 or hypothyroidism? You should also examine the head, look at the anterior fontanelle. And the vital signs are very important. If the child has some problems with the heart rate and respiratory rate, sepsis can be a clue for that. You should also examine the abdomen. Can you palpate a liver? Can you palpate a spleen? Because if the child is a neonate and you can palpate a spleen, then you are thinking about one of these torches infection. And then you also look for ascites as well. You should not forget to examine the lungs of your child, because cystic fibrosis is there. So if the child has recurrent respiratory tract infections, you can pick it up. You should listen to the heart for a murmur, as Alagille syndrome tends to be associated with pulmonic abnormalities. Look at the limbs of the child and anthropometry, because sometimes the child may be failing to thrive, and that is where the clue may come in. So you should not forget to do a detailed anthropometry of your baby and look on the skin. The eye examination is very important because of these metabolic and some genetic abnormalities. Look for cataracts, look for red cherry spots, and then posterior embryotoxins for Alagille syndrome. So when you are done, you need to do the carry out necessary investigation. And ideally, because the conditions or the differential diagnoses are many, it's difficult for us to or you can't do all the labs at once. So you need to actually target your investigations. And these are targeted investigations that I think we should all take into consideration. We have the tier 1. The main aim of the tier 1 is to identify early problems that can be treated easily, such as hypothyroidism and sepsis especially. So once the child comes, these are the first set of labs that you have to do. Liver function test, looking at your liver enzymes. So you have to look at your ALT, AST, and GGT, and as well as your ALP. All this will give you an idea to the extent of liver injury and even helps you to make a diagnosis. Your serum INR will give you a cue to the synthetic function of your liver. If it's elevated, the risk of coagulopathy is very high and you need to intervene as soon as possible. Your full blood count, your septic screen, and I keep on emphasizing that UTIs are very common. Once you see a child with prolonged jaundice, don't hesitate to do a urine culture and make sure you treat any urinary tract infection. You also need to look for urine for reducing substances that may give you a clue for a metabolic disorder. And when it's positive, don't just look at it in isolation. Make sure you look at your urinalysis, because glucose is a reducing substance. So if you have glucose in your urine, that can give you a positive test for reducing substance. And as I mentioned, thyroid function test and an abdominal ultrasound. It's not only for biliary atresia, but there are some conditions which are associated with splenic malformations. So you need to ask your radiologist to look at the spleen. Maybe there might be some polysplenism or asplenism. So these will give you some clues as well. So when you are done with this and you did not find any diagnosis, then you move on to the tier 2 investigations. These tier 2 investigations are usually done in association with the pediatric gastroenterologist. So you have to do a metabolic screen where you are looking for your GALT1 assay. If you are thinking about galactosemia, you need to do your serum ammonia levels. You have to do DNA PCR if you are thinking about a Torches infection. And then genetic testing is also very important. Luckily, there's an NGO that supports us and does genetic testing for some of our babies. And that's how we're able to diagnose one of our babies with pyroxenemia. And then sweat chloride analysis, we are thinking about cystic fibrosis. But these should be done in context with the case that you are dealing with. We also have other modalities such as imaging. For example, you need to do a chest X-ray if you are thinking about any heart abnormality or Alagille syndrome. And then the spinal X-ray to look at the butterfly vertebrae, and an echo as well as a cholangiogram. Liver biopsy is also very important because it can give you some characteristics which might be seen on histopathology to help you to make your diagnosis. But with this, you need to make sure your INR is optimum, and then the risk of bleeding is reduced. So you need to consult other specialists when it comes to children with prolonged jaundice or cholestasis. The gastroenterologist, the ophthalmologist, the cardiologist, the pediatric surgeon, all these people will play a role in both the investigation and the management of your child. So it's very necessary to consult and refer the child early so that we can manage the child appropriately. So this is a working algorithm for the management of a child with or an infant with neonatal cholestasis. Once you see a child, you should be able to decide, is the child ill or not? Once you see that you confirm that the child is sick, you need to do a septic screen as soon as possible. And then if it's positive, treat for infections. And then you may need to go further because you know that galactosemia is associated with E. coli septicemia. So once you see that, you need to investigate the child for galactosemia. And you also have to go further and look for your tortoise infection because CMV is quite commonly associated with neonatal cholestasis. If the child is otherwise well, then you need to look at the stools. Are the stools pigmented or pale? If it's pale, you need to go ahead and do your fasting ultrasound to look at the state of your gallbladder. And then liver biopsy is also very important. If the stools are pigmented, then you're thinking about a genetic or a metabolic abnormality, and you need to investigate in that line accordingly. So once you've made a diagnosis of neonatal cholestasis, how do you manage an infant with this condition? The approach to managing a child with neonatal cholestasis is family-centered, and it involves the whole family, not just the child, but the whole family should be involved. And these are the main principles. You need to provide nutritional support, you need to monitor the growth of the child, medical management of the cholestasis, and treat the specific disease that you have diagnosed, which is causing the cholestasis. You need to monitor and then manage any complications that may arise and provide psychological support for the family. So with nutritional support, you need to provide adequate calories, at least 120 to about 150% of the daily requirements of calories, and then adequate protein intake. You do not restrict protein unless the child is encephalopathic. You also need to treat and then give prophylaxis for to come against fat-soluble deficiencies. And you also need to provide these babies with adequate amounts of medium-chain triglycerides. In the developed countries, there are actually special formula which contain medium-chain triglycerides, but we do not have that. So we encourage our mothers to continue breastfeeding. But during the period of introducing complementary feed, we encourage our mothers in our clinic to give their children palm kernel oil, coconut oil, and palm oil, which is rich in medium-chain triglycerides, and that supports them. These medium-chain triglycerides are easily broken down and used by the liver. You also have to give water-soluble vitamins as well, and then ensure that you give calcium and phosphorus supplementation when there's metabolic bone disease. So with the micronutrient treatment, these are the doses for the fat-soluble vitamins. You should note that we don't really have vitamin A in these formulations. So what we would recommend is that you give your baby or you give the child multivitamin syrup, which has high content of vitamin A. With the vitamin D, ideally, vitamin D3 is best, and they come as drops. You can get them on the, in the pharmacies. But you need to make sure you do your vitamin D25 levels first so that you have a baseline to either treat or give prophylaxis for vitamin D deficiency. Vitamin K is very important, and it should be started as soon as you diagnose a child with cholestasis. If you do your INR and it's high, you may need to increase your dose of vitamin K. In Kolebu, we give IV vitamin K as oral medication. And then we also have vitamin E supplements. They usually come in the forms of pills or these jelly tablets where we just squeeze the medication out for the baby. Also have fat-soluble vitamins where you get them in your multivites syrups. And then you also have to give calcium and phosphorus supplementation. For the medical management of cholestasis, esodeoxycholic acid is a very important choleretic agent, which helps improve bowel activity or bowel function in the liver. Phenobap has also been given. And in later stages of cholestasis, sometimes you may need to give bowel acid binding, such as cholestyramine. But with this, you need to give it far away from meals, as it can bind all the fats in the feet of the child. Diphenhydramine is also important when they come with the pruritus, and you give it to them to support with the itch. We have rifampicin and terfenadine as well. And to manage the specific disease, I mentioned that once you get a diagnosis, you have to manage accordingly. So if it's a biliary atresia, you have to refer to the pediatric surgeons for urgent surgery. If it's congenital hypothyroidism, you need to start urgently with your level thyroxine. Galactosemias, you need to avoid all galactose-containing foods. Treat urine UTIs, and then make sure you do the necessary post-treatment follow-ups for these infants. Into the congenital infection, you treat. If it's syphilis or CMV, you manage accordingly. And in the long term, liver transplant may be indicated. So this is showing a flow diagram or how the stages of neonatal cholestasis are managed. We have the early stages, as we've talked about earlier, where you need to make a diagnosis and then do disease-specific therapy. And as I talked about our choleretic and antipyretic agents, you need to start that. And then you also have to start your fat-soluble vitamins. Hello?
Yes, sorry, please, because of our time, please try rounding up for us.
Yes, so this is actually my last slide. So
all right, thank you then.
Thank you. So you need to also continue with your childhood immunizations and childcare clinics. So our take-home message is that cholestasis is an important problem of the hepatobiliary system, and its dysfunction greatly affects the newborn or the infant. And most of the causes are usually treatable. So once we're able to find the diagnosis, we need to treat as soon as possible to ensure favorable prognosis. And healthcare professionals should be vigilant in the identification of infants with prolonged jaundice. So here are my references, my acknowledgements, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Animedwana Nebenfu. Also very well done, very extensive and then in-depth presentation. We are very grateful. Please, if there are any questions, please, just like you did for the previous one, type them in the comments or the chat session. We will attend to all those questions later. And because of our time, we will quickly move on to the next and final presentation for the night, for the evening. So our next presentation will be done by Dr. Victor Kobi Edri, who is a consultant pediatric surgeon in the Department of Surgery, Kolebu Teaching Hospital, and also a pediatric surgeon at the PML Children's Hospital, a visiting pediatric surgeon at Cape Coast Teaching Hospital, and an adjunct lecturer in pediatric surgery in the Department of Surgery, University of Cape Coast, SMS. He is a fellow of the West African College of Surgeons, and then he actually won a prize for the best candidate in pediatric surgery way back in 2008. So you can tell that the field is his. And he's been in this department for a very long time, and he's very well versed in issues concerning pediatric surgery. So without wasting much time, without much ado from my end, I'll hand over to Dr. Victor to take us through the next presentation, which is going to be on surgical management of neonatal jaundice. So, boss, please, if you are ready, we are ready for you. If there are challenges sharing from your end, we could do the sharing here. But
yeah, I think the last speaker, okay, I think I'll try and share.
Okay.
Because I have revised, or have you gotten my new presentation?
I have one of your presentation. I'm not sure if it is a new one.
Okay.
You project so that you check for us if it is surgical management.
Oh, sure.
Okay, it's still not showing.
Still not sharing.
No, not yet, please. We could try from our end so that you check and see if it is the same.
Okay, what I sent another presentation to Jacqueline, which has 20 slides. This has 14, but it's okay. I can probably manage with this.
When you're saying 14, okay.
This is 14. Let me see what that. Let me try. Give me just a moment. Let me see what.
We stop sharing from our end so you can try again.
I don't know why it cannot share. Okay. I can't see why my screen is not sharing. Okay, kindly put up what I sent so that, yes, and please go to. All right, so good evening, and my name is Victor Etri, as has been said, and I'm glad to share with you the surgical management of neonatal jaundice. A lot has been said by the previous speakers. Next slide, please. And so we're just going to look straight to the point. And next slide. Now, it's good what has been said earlier. A lot of in-depth knowledge has been given. And I must say that despite the difficulty in managing neonatal jaundice, sometimes there are people who think that, oh, once the child comes with jaundice, just put under phototherapy, and then that is all. When the levels get below photo level, then it's like, okay, we are done with you. You know, you can go. But then it is important that one has in-depth knowledge, like has been shared, so that the appropriate thing is done. It is not always easy to arrive at, please stay on there, yeah. It's not always easy to arrive at the specific cause of the jaundice. And so that becomes a diagnostic challenge or enigma. And then when it becomes prolonged, then a lot of people get worried about it, for those who are well-meaning and know the consequence of this. It is important that whenever you see a child with jaundice, you have to ask yourself, is there a need for surgical management? And I can bet you that in a few, there'll be the need for this to be done. This sometimes, unfortunately, is delayed because of not knowing what exactly we should do after we have managed the initial indirect hyperbilirubinemia. Next slide. Now, by way of cause, a lot has been said. And so for jaundice, we have hematologic, enzymatic, infectious, and obstructive. A lot of times when someone thinks of obstructive jaundice, is always looking at surgical. But the previous speaker has made us aware that there are non-surgical jaundice as well. And it's, next slide, something we need to look at. Now, so by way of definition, obstructive jaundice is cessation of flow of bile resulting in pale stool. Very simple definition. I get patients referred and the diagnosis of obstructive jaundice, and you ask, what's the color of the stool? And either it hasn't been checked or the stool is very yellow and sometimes green. I say, well, if the stool is colic, then you cannot think of obstructive jaundice in this sense. So obstructive jaundice results from interruption of the drainage of bile and bile salts. It's not always a surgical problem because there are medical problems, metabolic, as the previous speaker alluded to. And because of the obstruction that occurs, there is accumulation of conjugated bilirubin and bile salts. Now, the problem with obstructive jaundice is that as you have unconjugated bilirubin increasing, it causes damage to the liver. And this damage, unfortunately, is irreversible. And so it is something that must come to mind anytime we're thinking of jaundice. Just as I know pediatricians are a lot concerned about the, the brain, the damage to the brain that will ensue from poorly managed indirect hyperbilirubinemia. But it's also important to not think only about the brain, but you also need to think about the liver that is undergoing the insults. And so generally, as has been said, conjugated hyperbilirubinemia is when your diet fraction is above 20% of the total. So after you have done your phototherapy, you check your bilirubin level and you find out that the conjugated is gone up. Please don't stop there. Don't say that because your indirect fraction is below photo, let's stop photo. Okay, mommy, the jaundice is down. Please, you can now go home. Come for review. Please know, once you see that your conjugated fraction is above 20%, don't end there. Continue your investigation. Next slide, please. So this is the anatomy of the biliary system. And from the liver, bile flows through the right and left hepatic ducts to the common hepatic duct. And then you have the gallbladder through the cystic duct joining the common hepatic to become the common bile duct. Bile is stored in the gallbladder and then excreted when needed for metabolism. Now, so when we talk about obstructive jaundice, apart from having problems within the liver parenchyma that may cause obstruction, swollen hepatocytes and all that, you can also have problems referred to the extrahepatic biliary tree that one needs to be mindful of. Next slide. Now, so the causes. Essence of my presentation is not to give in-depth knowledge about the various causes, but to draw our attention to these possible surgical problems that could be the cause of the conjugated hyperbilirubinemia, and one must bring his attention to that. A lot of times we're thinking of biliary atresia. Yes, biliary atresia is the commonest, and it's due to obstruction of the extrahepatic biliary tree. It could be just the right and left bile ducts, or it could be the common hepatic, or it could be the common bile duct that is obstructed. And there are two types: the fetal type, which is syndromic and associated with polysplenia, cardiac anomalies, etc. And then there is also the postnatal type or the perinatal type, which is what we commonly encounter. That forms about 80 to 90% of biliary atresias. And in this type, the insult that occurs is usually in the perinatal period, maybe due to viral infections, maybe due to immunologic challenges of the body. And so biliary atresia is the commonest cause of obstructive jaundice. Once that is diagnosed, yes, surgery must be done within the shortest possible time because of the possibility of having irreversible liver injury. Choledochal cyst is the next common cause of obstructive jaundice or surgical jaundice. And this is due to dilatation of various parts of the biliary, extrahepatic biliary tree, sometimes to the extent of even involving the intrahepatic biliary tree. So you have cystic dilatations of either the common bile duct or the common hepatic, or one involving both the common hepatic and common bile duct all together. Now, these are fairly easy to diagnose. Ultrasound is able to diagnose this easily. And once that has been diagnosed, surgery is what is recommended, and that solves the problem. Fortunately for choledochal cysts, they don't usually have the sequelae that biliary atresias commonly have. And so for us in pediatric surgery, it's one diagnosis that when we see, we are very happy, because once you treat, you do surgery for them, the outcomes are very good. The next is spontaneous perforation of the bile duct. And these are neonates who may just have part of their extrahepatic biliary tree perforating, causing a biliary ascites. And so when you're looking at the distended abdomen in a child who is jaundiced, don't only think about it being the liver that is distended. If you do a good clinical examination, you find out that the child has ascites. Now, this ascites is not because of liver failure, and so it's a serous ascites. It could be a biliary ascites. And so I would suggest that a little tap will let you know whether it is serous or it is bilous ascites. And if it's bilous ascites, think of a spontaneous perforation of bile duct, and you'll not be far away from being correct. Then we have other conditions, inspissated bowel syndrome, intrahepatic hypoplasia, Carolo disease, etc., which are less and less common, and we don't commonly encounter these ones in our region. Next slide. So when you have a child who has prolonged jaundice, as has been said, it is important to take a good history. There is no point looking down on that. A very good history is always important. And the main things that we surgeons are just straightforward, bang, 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 like that. Pardon our straightforwardness, but we are looking at the child as jaundice, yes. What is the nature of the stool? Is it pale? If the mother tells you, we've had mothers who tell us, oh, the child's stool is yellow. Then they tell you, you ask them what type of yellow, and they can show you very obvious yellow that, in your mind's eye, okay, this is a colic stool. Till you have looked at what is in the diaper, or till you have done a dictal rectal exam. And so my message here is that, please, if you have a child with prolonged jaundice, if you can't see the stool in the diaper, please see the stool on your examining finger that goes into the rectum. Every child must have a dictal, every jaundice child must have a dictal rectal exam. The only contraindication is if you don't have a finger or if the child has no anal opening. There's also the child presenting with dark urine. Then when you examine, you may have hepatomegaly, which is consistent. You have to check the consistency. Is it firm? Is it soft? If it is firm, then there's a lot of challenges. It means that the liver injury is advanced. Sometimes they are virtually hard, and that is a problem. I can say that if you have a neonate who has a hard liver, then it's not likely to be a surgical cause, because it takes a while for the biliary cholestasis to cause the problem. So we talked about examination again. If you have splenomegaly, apart from what has been said earlier, you also are looking at, is this the syndromic biliary atresia that has polysplenia, that has other associations with it, as well as cardiac murmurs. All these are part of the syndromic biliary atresia, and usually that one is not amenable to surgical intervention, except for liver transplant. Next slide, please. So how do you evaluate this child who has come to you with jaundice, pale stool, dark urine? You are suspecting obstructive jaundice. A lot has been said, but again, we need to look at the liver function test. Now, your bilirubin levels, total, direct, indirect, yes, you want to read them. Actually, left to me, I would say that any child, after you have done your phototherapy and you want to ascertain what the state of the patient's bilirubin level is, I'll suggest an LFT, because it gives you a very good picture. If your bilirubin has come down, yes, it has come. If your direct bilirubin has gone up, you will know. If your liver enzymes are good to go, you're happy and you can discharge this child happily, rather than send the child home and later come back, you do LFT and find out that there is significant derangement in the liver enzymes. And where obstruction of the biliary tree is concerned, emphasis must be placed on what is the gamma glutamyl transferase like. If it's significantly elevated, then have a high index of suspicion for a surgical problem or an obstruction. You also want to do clotting profile to see what the synthetic function of the liver is being said, and other tests that can be done, full blood count, urine cultures, etc., etc. Next slide, please. Then sometimes you may have to do special biochemical studies, and the previous speaker mentioned these, and you want to rule out viral causes of this prolonged jaundice or of indirect hyperbilirubinemia, so that you know what you are dealing with. Next slide. Then imaging. Imaging is very important, and the first line of imaging we'll do is ultrasonography. What are we looking for when we do ultrasound? Commonly, we'll say that let's do the ultrasound with a child fasted and after feeding. Now, the reason being that when the child fasts, bile is stored in the gallbladder, and when the child feeds, the gallbladder contracts and the bile is excreted into the GIT. And so in a situation where the gallbladder does not change in size, then there could be an obstruction. When the situation where you don't see the gallbladder at all, then you are dealing with probably a biliary atresia, right? So you're looking at atretic gallbladder, you're looking at the biliary tree. The interesting thing is in biliary atresia specifically, which is the commonest cause of surgical jaundice, the intrahepatic ducts are not dilated. So if you want a sonographer to come and tell you that intrahepatic ducts are dilated, so it means this is it, then unfortunately you will not get that. The other thing I want to mention here is that we are getting all manner of cadres of sonographers. Some are experts at their work, some are not experts. And I always say that when you get the report, look at the image that has been sent to you, the pictures that the sonographer sends to you, and then always correlate. They will write that correlate with clinical findings. Had patients who have colic stools, yellow stool, very yellow, but because sonographer has said that biliary atresia, the patient gets sent over as biliary atresia. Right? Does it correlate? If it's biliary atresia, because the stools will be pale. If the stools is colic, then there's no biliary atresia. So don't let the patient wait till the next surgical clinic to come. Clinically, things don't add up. So then you need to look further, right? So other features you find on ultrasound are cystic dilatation of the extrahepatic duct. That may indicate that you have a choledochal cyst. You have ascites from your ultrasound, and you need to differentiate whether this is biliary ascites or it is serous ascites. A little tap will let you differentiate. Then you can find biliary sludge, be it in the gallbladder or in the bile ducts. You may find inspissated bile, and proximal to that, you may have your bile duct that is dilated. Usually, obstruction due to biliary sludge or inspissated bile usually resolves spontaneously, or sometimes you may have to do surgery and irrigate the biliary tree, and then that is the next slide. Other forms of evaluation that one can do, you can pass an NG tube and push it further down so that it will slide into the duodenum, and then aspirate the fluids that you get. If the fluid you aspirate is bilous, then definitely this is not an obstructive jaundice. So you can continue with other investigations. You can also do hepatobiliary scintigraphy. The challenge with doing this imaging in our environment is that our agent must be imported, and where you are considering biliary atresia, we are fighting against time. And so if you're waiting to do a scintigraphy and it's going to take 3 weeks to import the radioisotope marker, then we are going to be working against time, so it's not a common investigation that we will do in our environment. But where it's readily available, I mean, it is something that is done and has quite a high sensitivity and specific for biliary atresia or obstructive situations. And endoscopic retrograde cholangiopancreatography, ERCP, can also be done where available, but this is not available in Kolebu. I'm not sure about Kumasi or Tamale, but usually you do this, you get to the second part of the duodenum endoscopically, and then you pass a tube into the ampulla of Veta and aspirate the content to see whether it's bile or not. Then you can also do liver biopsy. Liver biopsy is sensitive if it is done early. In the first few weeks when you have your prolonged jaundice, that is when it's quite sensitive and it can tell you whether you have a cholestatic situation on your hand or whether it's another challenge. But when the patients come to us quite late, then it doesn't help very much. Though when we do surgery, we end up doing liver biopsy. So the most sensitive way to diagnose what the problem is like what surgeons do, is to do a laparoscopy or to do a laparotomy. And then in that you can do intraoperative cholangiogram, and that can tell you whether the biliary tree is patent or not. If you do intraop cholangiogram and it's patent, then you can close up. If it is not patent, then it means there's an obstruction, and you go on to manage that. Next slide. So what we do when we have a patient with an obstructive jaundice that is being worked up for surgery, we'll give vitamin K, and that's where Dr. Afai and I crossroads, or we differ. She will give oral vitamin K, the IV prep as oral, but we will prefer to give it parenterally so that it will hit well, because we think that bile is not being produced, fat is not being absorbed, and vitamin K absorption will therefore be a problem. So we prefer to give parenteral vitamin K. Then we will load the patient with IV fluids with high glucose content, because the liver stores are a challenge. And so we don't want hypoglycemia on our hands. So we want to make sure there's high glucose content. We give broad spectrum antibiotics at the induction of surgery, and then we do our definitive surgery. And I'm not sure this forum is to teach exactly what we do. Next slide. So we'll just have a pictorial presentation. Yeah, so in a nutshell, what we do is we divide the jejunum about 10 cm from the DJ junction, and then the distal end is sent to the porta hepatis, while we anastomose where we divided the jejunum to about 40 cm from the distal limb, right? Now, this limb that goes to the porta hepatis, what we're going to do is, if it's biliary atresia, we're going to dissect the biliary tree, the remnant tree that we have, all the way to the porta hepatis and core into the liver, and then anastomose this limb to the liver. If it is choledochal cyst, we excise all of the cysts, and then we anastomose the jejunum to whatever biliary tree that is left. And that is what we commonly do. Next slide. Now, we maintain the 40 cm of bowel before the next anastomotic end, because we want to avoid one of the commonest post-op complications, which is ascending cholangitis. So that 40 cm of jejunum is just going to be a biliary conduit, and we're hoping that food is not going to go up or bacteria go up to cause cholangitis. Post-operatively, there's IV fluids, NG aspirations, till bowel activity is restored, and then we feed. And we're always happy when the first stool that is passed has green in it or yellow in it, and we know that we've been successful. We give antibiotics, and then we will assess other things. Now, we in this unit give steroids. We give hydrocortisone post-operatively to facilitate flow from the biliary ducts or duct tubes that we anastomose the bowel to in biliary atresia, because research has shown that it helps with bowel flow. Next slide. Right, what complications can occur? I'm a surgeon, so I can't go without telling you about complications. So sometimes we can have leakage from the anastomotic point, but in very few instances, maybe 10% of cases that we had to go back to revise our anastomosis there. Sometimes you can have leakage from where you join the bowel together. That's the bowel anastomosis. Cholangitis is not an uncommon complication, and it's something that we fear and always want to avoid, you know. Then if things, because of the state in which the patients come, sometimes they are delayed, the liver is already hard, you can intraoperatively see that it is cirrhotic. There is a liver cirrhosis that goes on with subsequent portal hypertension. and eventually there can be liver failure. And this is what we want to avoid. We want to avoid the liver failure, we want to avoid the portal hypertension. And so we think that expeditious investigations is necessary, as well as expeditious management of this. And I must say that we liaise a lot with gastroenterologist, Dr. Afar, who has been very helpful to us in management of these patients. Next slide. So prognosis. Major determinants of satisfactory outcome are the age at initial operation. That's why we are, looking forward to seeing these patients when they are, still in their neonatal stage or early infancy, all right? And that is one of the main determinants, the time that you do the surgery. It's a race for time. Sometimes the extent of liver parenchyma disease at the time of diagnosis also affects the outcome. And even in good places, biliary atresia, after they've done their portal enterostomy, the outcomes are bad. But Japan, I don't know, they do quite well. They have a 70% 10-year survival, which is very good. Next slide. Next slide, please. Or is this the last? Yeah, so where all has been done, now there is this thing of thirds. So 1/3 of patients are not going to have bile flow. 1/3 of patients are going to have moderate outcomes, and 1/3 will have successful outcome following your, especially for biliary atresia. For choledochal cyst and spontaneous bowel perforation, there is no problem with them, but for biliary atresia, can be quite a headache. So about 60% of these patients will end up having challenges with their liver, and so may need liver transplantation. And so it is important always to think about the liver failure, not only about the cerebral problems, also think about the liver failure and think of the fact that, yes, we can transplant brain, we can transplant liver, but nonetheless, we should be focused on preserving the liver function. Next slide. All right, so in conclusion, has been said already, jaundice that persists beyond 14 days needs meticulous and expeditious investigation, and always have an obstructive cause in mind and rule that out. And you can continue with the tier 2 and tier 3 investigations that you have in mind. And timely intervention can save a great hazard of liver failure that may require liver transplants. Thank you very much for your audience. And I have enjoyed the first 2 presentations quite well. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much. I think we will all agree that our 3 presenters have done extremely well, and then very good mastery of the various topics they handled. And I have learned a lot myself, because I've been writing some pointers down myself. So we are so grateful to our presenters and for the depth of knowledge you've shared with us. There are so many questions, a couple of questions that have been teased out. We will come to the questions. If you still have any questions, please put them in the chat. And because of our time, we will not allow questions to be asked over the call. So please, as much as possible, write them in the chats. We will tease them all out, and then the presenters are already jotting their questions out to answer. But before we go there, yes, we will take a short word from Africa Health Supplies from Mr. Albert Ankra. I don't know if he's on now. And if he is, because they supply, they deal in the Firefly machines that most facilities are using. So we wanted them to give us a word, and they've been our partners for long, but they are doing very well for PSD. So Mr. Albert, please, if you are on, can you check and see if he's was okay. Dr. Hilda, I still can't find the name of Mr. Albert is joining with, so it's difficult to unmute him, to fish him out and unmute. I don't know if you are aware Of what name? Because I'm getting the information he's on the call, but I'm not sure with which name. Okay, so whilst we wait, we have some very educative, very short videos from our colleagues. You know, in the Bono East, we are not the only hospital in this catchment area. Our close neighbors are St. Teresa's Hospital at Nkranza, headed by one very fine pediatrician, Dr. Wilson. So they have a short word for us, which will, it's just under a minute before we come to the questions, because there won't be time after the questions for that. So we'll play a short video whilst we try to reach Mr. Albert, because we really want to hear from them. I hope I can be heard. I think it can, because the microphone is responding. Please, if I can be heard, can anyone just unmute and then alert me that I can be heard? Okay, yes, all right. Thank you, Dr. Dora. So let's go on. And the video be heard by them. And please, can we hear the audio from the video? Said it can't be heard. So let's try playing from the system. Otherwise, we'll just go to the questions. Yes, try from the high sense and see. Yes.
Oh, that is neonatal jaundice. It's about the time of the year where we create awareness and make the whole world, especially mothers of newborns, those with neonatal jaundice can be treated when identified early, which can go a long way in saving lives, preventing complications and disability. So I'd like you and me to champion this cause and make it known that neonatal jaundice can be treated. Stop the yellow, stop disability and death. I am around the world and you it. Let's do this together. Thank you.
All right, I think we can stop here. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, all right, okay, so I mean, this is just to motivate the other facilities that you could do something similar and then share on your various platforms so that we make the month very active. We shouldn't just begin and end today. So this is what our nurses from Ubranza did, and we will share with you as well. So you could use that as a guide to also do something for your own facilities and then for the radio stations as well. All right. Okay, so now we'll go to our questions. We've teased some of the questions out. So can you please project there? Yes. So for the presenters, if you're able to tease yours out, please, can you help us with the answering of the questions? So we are sharing, is it being shared? Okay. Yes, share this one. So Dr. Jennifer.
Yes, Echo, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, please.
Okay, thank you. So I've tried to tease out a few of the questions. I hope I got everything here. Oh, you want to project it?
Yeah, we try to tease them out as well. So we are projecting. So if you see them, then you can answer them for us.
Okay. So I want to ask, is it compulsory to cover the eyes of the baby during phototherapy? Yes, in our part of the world. So there's been evidence to show that prolonged exposure to the blue light causes retinal damage. And because of that, the eye shield has been recommended to be used for the babies. But that said, there are other studies that have also come out to say that there actually has not been any documented effects of the blue light on the baby. So there are actually two schools of thought, but from where I come from, it's safer for us to cover the eyes than to assume nothing would happen, then probably in the future something happens. So yes, your question is valid here. Schools of thought, and this is based on researches that have been done. Some conclusions says yes, some says there's no documented effects. So that is what I would say on that. If any of the other people have something to add.
Jenny, you are breaking off now. I don't know if.
Hello.
Yes, it's better now, but the voice was.
Sorry. So I was saying that there are two schools of thought. Some say there's no effect, the light has no effect on the eyes of the baby, and others say the prolonged exposure to the blue light causes retinal damage. So it depends on where you are coming from. But I was just drawing a word of caution that it's better we cover than to assume nothing would happen and then in the future something comes up. You can't go back and take it away. Okay, and then there's another one. I want to ask if preterm babies with physiological jaundice should start the normal vaccination at 6 weeks. Yes, preterm babies should start their normal routine vaccinations like any normal baby as soon as they are stable. Once they get out of that critical phase, the very sick phase, they should start their EPI. We don't have to delay their EPI because they are preterm. Bear in mind, they are more vulnerable than even the same babies and need that particular protection. The caution is that don't give it to them when they are critically ill or acutely ill and you are putting in a lot of interventions. Allow them to recover when they are stable. Some facilities even start the EPI before they are discharged. When they are preparing for discharge, they allow the vaccines to be given to the babies before they leave the facility, and then they continue with the EPI. So please don't unduly delay immunizations for preterms just because they are preterms. Once they are stable, you should start their immunizations. What is the protocol for discharging patients with neonatal jaundice? As soon as their serum bilirubins are within the safe levels, you are good to go to discharge that particular baby. As I said earlier on, once you use the nomogram to decide on the modality of management, whether you are placing under photo, whether you are doing an exchange blood transfusion, or you are just breastfeeding and monitoring, you don't just do it and close your eyes. You have to be serially monitoring the serum bilirubin. Elsewhere, they are able to monitor it every 6 to 12 hours. If you have the TCD, you can even do it every 4 hours, every 6 hours. But in our parts of the world, even if you do a daily serum bilirubin, I think it's fair. And with each one, you have to plot it on the nomogram to see where you fall. So once the levels fall to very safe levels, you can, and this baby is clinically very stable, breastfeeding well, active and everything, you are safe to discharge this particular baby. And the last one, I don't think it is for me, anesthetic consideration. We have a few I wrote down here. There was a comment on including physiotherapists to the multidisciplinary team in the management of children that suffered neonatal jaundice and now have cerebral palsy. Yes, we can manage babies with cerebral palsy without the mention of physiotherapy. You are so core when it comes to the management and having some good life for these babies, especially that they've already gotten the damage already. It's just therapy, therapy, therapy. So yes, we don't take you out. You are part of the team that manages. And if you realize, as you stated in your comments, a lot of the cases you see are babies that had suffered jaundice. So when we see them, we automatically refer to the physiotherapy. But I think your comment is coming in. Next time, we'll invite your association and make you part of the whole celebration. It's well noted, and thank you very much. I think that is what I wrote. Yes, there was another one. Can a baby with hepatitis B positive mother who received the immunoglobulin at birth still test positive for hepatitis B? This is difficult to say yes or no, but it's possible. One, the vaccine, you're introducing the surface antigen. So it depends whether the immunity has been built already at the time that you are going to test. I don't think you just give the vaccine and you go and you start testing. At that point, you may have the surface antigen being positive, and you have to look at the profile to decide, is this from an infection or this is from the vaccination, among other things. And sometimes the way the vaccines are stored, the cold chain is broken, and the way it's transported to be given to the baby. And this vaccine is very expensive. You buy it close to 1,000 cedis, the parents buy it close to 1,000 cedis, and somebody, just because of some money they are in for, source it some way and somehow, and then just gives it to you, gives to the baby. You wouldn't get the effects that you really need the baby to get. So let's look at where it is being bought from, how it is stored, and how it is kept, so that the mothers in bed to prevent their babies from developing the infection would be able to achieve what they are looking for and not just waste their money and still lose their children. Because the effects of the hepatitis B infection doesn't really happen within the first few years of life. They'll start manifesting the effects later when they are aging, in their teens, getting to 20s and all that. Then you can't take back what harm has been caused. So I think that is a few I've noted.
All right. So Dr. Itri here, I also saw two questions for me, I think. One has to do with the, incidence or prevalence of surgical neonatal jaundice. I don't think we've really done a research on biliary atresia in Kolebu. I don't know about Confanochi, but averagely in a year we see, it fluctuates. Some years we see very few, but averagely in a year we operate on about 12 cases, so like one a month. We can have some months that we have quite a number, but averagely, let's say 10 to 12 a year, the number of cases we see. Now, one thing that I must say is that we don't have intraoperative cholangiogram. So during surgery, it's difficult to ascertain whether we really have a biliary atresia or not. even though in obstructive jaundice, when the bile is not flowing and the bile ducts are not draining bile, they generally will collapse and become hypoplastic, as it were, or become very thin. So I believe there have been a few instances where maybe the problem was more hepatocellular, that we may have had to do, or may have done Kasai, because the ducts were so tiny, we didn't do intraopcolangio. But being fair, we probably do about 10 to 12 biliary atresias a year. Choledochal cyst is uncommon. We may probably be doing about 5 a year. In all my life, I've done, as a pediatric surgeon, I've done about 4 spontaneous perforation of the common bile ducts, so these are rare cases. Now, anesthetic considerations. Yes, one would think that with the liver challenge, we'll do a total intravenous anesthesia, TIVA. But no, we use inhalational agents. So we will induce them with probably propofol or thiopentone, and then we maintain the anesthesia with isoflurane. Sometimes it may be difficult getting an IBSS, so we may induce them with inhalational agents, and the outcomes haven't been bad in any way. TIVA is not something we commonly use in our practice here. Thank you. But
all right.
Sorry, one moment. In terms of long-term outcomes, we usually send our patients to Dr. Afar. So I think Dr. Is it Benefo? I'm sorry, the second presenter, she is with Dr. Afar in the clinic, so she can probably tell us the outcomes after we have sent them the patient, the Kasai.
All right, thank you so much. I think there is one last question. Jennifer, I don't know if you want to take this, and then Dr. Anna Nebenfo can come in with a follow-up answer to the previous answer given by Dr. Victor. So this person is asking if it is possible for estrogen transfusion for a baby with fallen cord. Can I see that? Yes, if it is possible for estrogen transfusion for a baby with dry or fallen cord, and can it be done?
Yes, dry cord, I'm sure probably if you cut close to the base, you will still see the vessels and you should be able to catheterize. For a fallen cord, the place healed already, I really haven't seen it done, but Dr. Sipe says they've done it before and it was through a cut down. So it's possible.
Yes, yeah, so let's turn to that. Sorry, Dr. Itri here. Yes, it doesn't matter if the cord is dry or fallen off. Usually, even though dry, it is wet at the base. So you can cut it like has been said, and then you can insert your tube and it will go. If it is fallen off completely and you can't find the cord, if you do a cut down, you should be able to access the umbilical vein and then cannulate it. I don't know whether Dr. Victoria May Adabari is on the call, but as a house officer, she taught us umbilical cut down. And I'm sure some people say the surgeons are always, we have a reservation coming to answer your calls to do cut downs, but these are not big procedures. They can be taught to pediatricians. They can cut down on the umbilical vein and exchange transfuse, even if the cord has fallen off. Thank you.
Hello, please, can I be heard?
It's loud and clear. You can go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Itri. So I'm just giving some follow-up to the question concerning the prognosis or the long-term management of the babies who have had the Kasai procedure or babies with biliary atresia. It depends on the timing of the surgery. So usually those who have the surgeries done early, they tend to have better prognosis. Some may have the procedure failing, and we may have to manage them as chronic liver disease. But currently in our clinic, our oldest child with biliary atresia is almost 4.5 years old. She still has some managing her for the complications of chronic liver disease. But as we keep on saying, early diagnosis, early initiation of care is key in the management of neonatal cholestasis. So if it's done early enough, there are a lot of children in our clinics who have actually had successful Kasai procedures, thriving, growing very well, hitting all their milestones. But unfortunately, we still have some number who will have an unsuccessful Kasai and eventually develop chronic liver disease with its associated complications. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much to all our presenters and then for wonderfully approaching the questions as well. I saw a comment about whether you have to pay for the CPD. And yes, if you are not a PSG, registered PSG member, you have to make some payments. Yes, this is to encourage all of us to register as PSG members and then pay our annual dues so that we can keep these programs going. It takes a lot of money to organize all this. And this decoration is not for free. Yes. I mean, this one was for free, but it shouldn't have been for free. Yes, to run to keep the advocacy running takes a lot of money. So as many as can, please register, and then subsequently you get free CPDs. If you have not, then this is the opportunity to. Otherwise, you have to pay 70 cedis for the free CPDs for this lectures we've had. All right, thank you so much. I've really had a wonderful time, and I know most of us have, if not all of us. So at this point, okay, so I mean, there is a final question, and I don't know whether we still have time to take it, but since this is the last one, maybe I'll just spare a minute. Dr. Jennifer, this is in the domain, so someone is asking that the School of Thought says delayed cord clamping can cause jaundice in newborns. Is this true or what is that? Okay, is this true? Yes, so.
Is it true? Well, it's possible. So the whole thing about delayed cord clamping is to allow more blood to flow from the placenta to the baby. And in that case, you are increasing the blood volume within the baby. And from the initial aspects of my presentation, I did mention that already these babies have high hemoglobin. And once you have more blood pulling to the baby, you're increasing their HBs. And all that blood, some of it would have to break down to be able to, and that will release the heme, and it goes through the whole cycle. So to some extent, you would have higher levels of bilirubin, unconjugated bilirubin in the system. So I think, yes, it's possible.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Jennifer. I think at this point, we are far behind time, so I'll hand over to Dr. Jacqueline to take over and then give us the closing remarks and subsequently close us. So thank you all for your audience.
Thank you so much. Please, is my voice clear? Can I be heard?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Ko, and thank you to our presenters. We want to wrap up quickly, close on time. So we'll take the closing remarks from our guest of honor and chair, Dr. Mrs. Paulina Appiah. So over to you, Dr. Appiah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jacqueline Asibe. And I think you would all agree with me that it's been a very successful session that we've had. Very in-depth presentations by all the speakers. And so I will not attempt to summarize what had been said, but just to point out some key small issues that as a society, I think we can also look at. So the first is about this Jaundice month is an awareness creation month. And it's important that we do get our messages across very well. Sometimes it becomes a little bit of an issue if we don't give out key messages for our practitioners to use. For example, we want our CHOs to be able to speak to this jaundice issue. We want our health promotion officers to speak to it. So in Ghana Health Service, actually, what we do is when we have something like this, a topic like this, we link up with the health promotion division that is mandated by Ghana Health Service. I know it's not everybody here who works with Ghana Health Service, but at least they have a team who are trained just to put out health promotion messages in simple languages that everybody can understand. And so I would suggest that we look at that as well, because next week is the Child Health Promotion Week. It may be too late now because they've already sent out key messages, but we can look at it so that maybe in the next time I will do all the things that have been said here. Some of them are very technical, but they can be broken down so much that when you speak to somebody in the community, the person would understand it. When you speak to somebody at the clinic, as in being a health worker, the person will understand it. And it's not all the health workers who are on the same level, but they have the platform to be able to create awareness on this jaundice, which, as I said earlier, we don't actually know the burden. We know it's there, but what is the quantum of the burden? It is when we're able to tell the burden with evidence, then our policymakers, our government sees what the burden is and then the consequences, and they would want to invest resources into it. So let us look at that one as well. And then some simple messages that we can put across, because I think also of our color and the nature in which when a child is born, the child is kept indoors. Somebody may have the idea that jaundice is bad, but then this child is kept indoors only to be brought out to realize that this child is jaundice. So as we go on to give these messages concerning this jaundice month, let's keep in mind some of these messages so that we'll have a successful meeting during this month. And so on my own behalf, I want to thank you very much for choosing me to be the chair of this meeting. I have revised a lot when it comes to neonatal jaundice, and unfortunately, I used to be a member. I'm not paid up, so now I have to pay to be able to get my CPD. But we will see how that one goes. Thank you very much, and over.
Thank you so much, Dr. Appiah. A few announcements, then we are out of here. So just for all of us to know, this is the only national event we are going to have. What is going to happen the rest of the month? We want to engage from regional level to district and facility level. Let's do as much as we can do during this month. Health education, so heavy health education, and then media. Engage the media. We need to make as much noise as Dr. Our chair mentioned. The jaundice will have to enter the community. We want to engage stakeholders. So have a meeting, your referral facilities, your midwives, and the NICU team have a stakeholders meeting, and then our managers, and see how best we can identify jaundice. And what we want best this month is heavy community engagement. As much as we can enter our communities through our public health unit, community devers, we need to sink the message of jaundice into our community so that they also report and come early. Thank you all so much. I think we have a minute or two. Mr. Albert Ankra, if you are still on, you can unmute yourself and give us a message. They are the dealers in Firefly. So Mr. Albert Ankra, if you are on, you can unmute yourself and give us a small message.
Yes, very well, Doc. Dr. Sibe, thank you very much for the opportunity. I hope everybody can hear me, please.
Please, we can hear you very clearly.
Okay, all right. Well, I want to stand on all existing protocols and say a big thank you to the executives of Pediatric Society of Ghana for this invitation. My name is Albert Ankra, and I'm CEO for Africa Health Supplies Limited. As Dr. Sibe said, we're distributors of MTTS Firefly phototherapy equipment. But not just that, we are also involved in the distribution of many other equipment. As we see Pediatric Society of Ghana as a major partner in dealing with the issues of childhood jaundice, neonatal jaundice, we are always excited to have the opportunity to partner you to bring this message of awareness and advocacy to the people of Ghana. So we are very excited this year to also come on board to join you. Just as we've done over the years, we've been in the business of supplying the critical medical equipment that various hospitals and health facilities need to be able to deal with this issue. This year in particular, actually from last year, this year, we've also been happy to be a part of the MEPSI2 project. And that is a key project that's been in the business of equipping 4 key hospitals in the country, Greater Accra Regional Hospital, RAGE, Koforidua Regional Hospital, Bono Regional Hospital, and Tema Regional Hospital. And I'm happy to see that for now, most of the equipment, almost all the equipment that those hospitals need to make sure that they deal with the issues of neonatal jaundice were supplied by us, and we are very excited about this particular project. And we want to use the same opportunity to encourage many other hospitals to also reach out to us and see how we can help them to be able to acquire these critically needed equipment, particularly equipment like the Dolphin CPAP, which we've brought a lot into the system. Of course, the Firefly, the Colibri, and many other NICU equipment are all on, at our facilities, and we are happy to discuss with, health centers, hospitals to arrange very flexible terms and make sure that they receive all the support through training, maintenance, to ensure that the equipment that we deliver also are able to survive the test of time and live on to from 5 years to 10 years upwards. On behalf of my own self, my team at Africa Health Supplies, we want to wish the Pediatric Society of Ghana well. We want to thank God for your lives, all the wonderful sacrifices and good work that you've done over the years and continue to do. We want to pray for long life for everybody, for all the members of the society, so that God can still strengthen you, and then you can still do all the wonderful miracles that you keep doing for this country. I want to bless you and wish you well, and be rest assured that partners and sponsors like us will always be with you to support you all the way. Thank you so much, and may God bless you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ankra. We are grateful for the great collaboration with Pediatric Society and health facilities. We can't appreciate enough what you've been doing for us. So we want to appreciate the leadership for Pediatric Society for this opportunity to meet and share knowledge. We are grateful to the Bono Ahafo region, the organizing team, grateful Dr. Dora Dapa, Dr. Solomon Chimongo, Dr. Cole, Dr. Priscilla, and Dr. Rosemond. Thank you for the good job, and all the other organizers. We are very grateful. Dr. Paulina Pia, we are very grateful for taking this chair on very short notice, and we are very grateful. Thank you. The excellent and fantastic presentation by our facilitators, Dr. Victor Ejuri, Dr. Jennifer Asaman, and then Dr. Anna Nebenfo. We are so grateful. We'll take the closing prayer by Dr. Dora Dapa, pediatrician at St. Elizabeth Hospital, Redeem. Over to you, Dr. Dora. Thank you.
Thank you, boss. Okay. Good evening. So we are praying. Jehovah God, we thank thee for today. We thank thee for a successful lunch and deliberation. Father, we know that whatever we've learned today, we are here to help the newborns, to help Mother Ghana, and to help the world at large. Father, whatever we've learned today, don't let's just listen to it. Father, help us so that we'll do proper advocacy. We'll help patients survive both clinically and also in the public health aspect. Father, we know that this is just the beginning of a month-long activity. We pray for your grace, your strength, and your wisdom to support us, to spot the yellow and also stop disability. We know we cannot do anything without you, so we ask for your grace. Father, we ask that you protect us and guide us. We thank the life, God, please bless the life of our facilitators, our presenters. They did a great job. And also all our organizers, all PSG members and non-members, and all those who listen. We thank thee, and we thank thee for your blessings. And we thank thee that you've been able to help us in Mother Ghana. In Jesus' name we pray. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. We also want to appreciate Madam Samira. He came from Ghana News Agency to do a coverage for us. And UTV, they did a live coverage at Holy Family. We are grateful for your continued support. Please remember to share your videos, your pictures of our activities, so it will motivate others. We can do more. Thank you. So continue to spot the yellow, stop disability and death. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.